Is your HOA always this fair? My morning started with truck beep in my driveway and chains scraping metal in the dark. Karen's president badge might as well have been a plastic crown. She tried to have my mountain truck towed off my own driveway before sunrise. What she didn't plan on was my attorney sliding a subpoena and the state statute across her clubhouse table as phones clicked and projector light washed over the Treasury log. Next week, that tow order is evidence refunds roll out, and the only thing moving is her silent HOA board. The tow truck's reverse beep cut through the dark like someone backing a forklift into my skull. I checked the clock on the stove. 5:42 a.m. Another beep, the rattle of chains, something heavy settling where it shouldn't. On Maple Drive at that hour, that sound means trouble. I set my coffee down and went to the front window. My mountain truck sat in the driveway where I left it, nose toward the road, breath of exhaust still hanging in the cold. A bright yellow clamp now bit into the front wheel. A white tow truck crouched in front of it, amber flashers washing the snow and the siding of my house. Cold air slapped me awake when I opened the front door. "Hey," I called, stepping onto the porch in socks and a flannel. "What do you think you're doing?" The tow operator was a thick guy in a gray hoodie and beanie bent over the clamp with a steel bar. He looked up, gave me the tired half-shrug of someone who's had this argument too many times. "Morning," he said. "I'm here on direct order from your HOA president. Truck's in violation. In violation of what I came down the frozen steps, hand on the rail. The metal burned through the cloth. It's on my driveway. Plates are current. Try again." He tapped the tablet in his hand. "Not my call, sir. I get a work order, I show up, I do what it says." Behind him, a gray SUV idled at the curb, exhaust drifting in the beam of the tow lights. I already knew who was inside. The driver's door opened, and Karen Doyle stepped out like she owned the street. Long wool coat scarf, perfect blonde bob, sharp even in the wind. She hugged a leather folder to her chest as if it were a badge. "Good morning, Jack," she called, voice just a little too bright. I really hoped we wouldn't have to go this far. Clamping a man's truck before sunrise, I said, "You skipped far and went straight to ridiculous." She kept smiling, but the corners of her eyes tightened. "We've discussed your vehicle before," she said, walking toward the tow truck in careful boots. "Our community standards are clear about oversized, non-aesthetic vehicles. It disrupts the harmony of Cedar Ridge." "Harmony," I repeated. "Is that in the bylaws, or did you pull it off a coffee mug this week?" The passenger door opened. Rick Hayes climbed out, faded utility jacket zipped to his throat, clipboard tucked under his arm. He gave me a nod that wanted to pass for friendly. Jack Rick said nobody wants a fight. Karen's been patient. There've been notices, emails, door tags. "Great," I said. "Show me one." He shuffled papers on the clipboard, eyes skimming lines that weren't helping. "We sent them," he insisted. "You might have missed show. Me." I pointed at the clamp. "Or he takes that off and backs out of my driveway." The tow operator cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "you told dispatch this address had documented violations on file. I don't want trouble with state law." "You're contracted by the HOA," Karen said sharply. "We have authority to enforce community covenants. You're fine." I pulled my phone from my pocket thumb, waking the screen. "Let's help everyone feel fine," I said. "Hold still a second." I walked closer and framed the clamp, the truck, and the tow rig in one shot. The hazard lights painted everything orange. The camera made a clean digital click. I snapped another picture of the yellow clamp and the company logo on the door. Then I nodded toward the tablet. "Let me see the work order." The operator hesitated, then turned the tablet just enough. A single text thread filled the screen. From Karen Doyle. Message: "Proceed with tow on Maple Drive number 14. Non-compliance." The glow from the tablet lit his glove. I lifted my phone and took a photo of that, too. The shutter gave a soft beep in the cold air. "You see the problem yet?" I asked. "You're not acting on posted rules. You're acting on a text message from a woman who doesn't know State 2 law." Karen took a step forward, coat flaring. "Jack, don't start quoting half-remembered statutes," she said. Section 4. B of our updated covenants covers this exactly. Section 4B never passed a full owner vote, I said, and even if it had, it doesn't override state code. In this state, you don't tow off private residential property without written notice and a waiting period. On record, not in somebody's text history. The tow operator looked from her to me, jaw tightening. That true? He asked. Call your dispatcher, I said. Ask what happens when a homeowner files a complaint with photos, timestamps, and your logo in every frame. He didn't call, but his shoulders shifted. Ma'am, he said to Karen, I'm not risking my license on a gray area. I'm unhooking. If you want it moved that bad, get it into the street and call me back. There is no gray area, Karen snapped. You have an HOA order. Finish the tow. There's a state code, I said. That outranks your order. Rick stepped between us, clipboard pressed flat against his chest. Maybe you roll the truck into the garage, he said quietly. Meet us halfway so this doesn't escalate. I kept my eyes on his. What escalates, I said, is you thinking a clipboard and a title let you rewrite the law. Here's what's going to happen instead. I turned back to the operator. You're going to take that clamp off my truck, I said. You're going to back your rig out of my driveway. Then if you feel like it, you send the bill straight to the woman who texted you at 5 a.m. He studied me for a beat, then let out a breath that fogged the air. Yeah, he said. I'm not dying on this hill. He crouched and worked the clamp loose. Metal scraped against metal, then dropped away from the tire with a dull clunk. My chest loosened a notch. Karen stared at him like he'd just betrayed a crown. This isn't finished, she said. No, I agreed. It's just documented. I raised my phone one last time and took a clean shot of the tablet with her message. The camera answered with a sharp, satisfied beep. As the tow truck eased back into the street, amber lights still spinning, Rick leaned in close enough that only I could hear him. She's not done with you, he murmured. You just made yourself a project. I slid the phone into my pocket, fingers buzzing with cold and adrenaline. Then she'd better pace herself, I said, because I'm done being quiet. Clyde called just after 7 while I was still replaying the tow truck in my head. Bring the photos, he said. Lucas needs to see this. Meet us at the diner. When a man in his 60s who spent his life fixing other people's bad wiring says it like that, you don't argue. I grabbed my phone, printed the clearest shots from my home office printer clamp tow truck, the glowing text from Karen Doyle, and slid them into a manila folder. On the way out, I tucked a folded printout of the state tow statute into the same folder, the paper still warm from the laser printer. Mountain View Diner sat at the bend in the highway like it had been nailed there since the 70s. Neon coffee cup in the window bell on the door, the smell of bacon grease and cheap coffee already in the air by the time I pulled up. My mountain truck looked almost innocent under the pale morning light, parked exactly where it always did. Inside, every surface hummed with small-town routine mugs, clinking a radio low in the kitchen, the hiss of a grill. Retirees lined the counter talking weather and elk. The bulletin board by the entrance sagged under layered flyers, yard sales, church suppers, and a fat cluster of HOA announcements stamped with the Cedar Ridge logo. Clyde raised a hand from a corner booth. His heavy work jacket was draped over the seat beside him. Across from him sat a man in a navy blazer with rolled-up sleeves tie, loosened reading glasses pushed down on his nose like he'd put them there 3 hours ago and never taken them off. Jack Clyde said as I walked over, "This is Lucas Banner. Lucas, this is the guy with the truck you just heard about." Lucas stood to shake my hand, firm grip, eyes sharp gray at the temples. He looked like somebody who'd won arguments for a living and never really retired from it. "Appreciate you coming," he said. "Sit down. Let's see what we're working with." I slid into the booth and laid the folder on the table between us. The waitress dropped a mug in front of me like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please," I said, and whatever smells like bacon. That's everything she said, and walked off. I opened the folder and spread the photos out the clamp, biting into my front wheel, the tow truck parked across my driveway, the tablet screen with Karen's text glowing in the early dark. Lucas didn't talk right away. He just looked. He studied the clamp shot, then the wide shot of the tow truck blocking my driveway, then the tablet with "From Karen Doyle" and "Proceed with tow" on Maple Drive number 14. Non-compliance. He picked up the last one between his fingers. Tow orders like this, he said almost to himself, they unlock things Karen doesn't expect. Unlock what I asked. He nodded toward the folder. That printout you tucked in there, he said. State tow code. I blinked. People who walk in here with manila folders and that look on their face are either getting divorced or they printed the law, he said. Your eyes don't say divorce. I pulled out the folded sheet and handed it over. The tow provision I'd highlighted glowed neon yellow under the diner's fluorescent lights. He scanned the section, lips moving silently with the statute. The smell of bacon drifted over from the kitchen. Somewhere near the counter, a fork scraped a plate. Here, he said, tapping the highlighted part with his finger. Right here. This is what matters. Notice requirement, I said. I read that this morning. He nodded. That's not just a rule, he said. That's a condition. They don't meet it, any towing threat becomes improper enforcement. And improper enforcement, he looked up at me, triggers rights the HOA board hopes nobody reads. Clyde leaned in, hands wrapped around his mug. Like what he asked. Because they've been waving tow threats around for years now. Like the right to demand a full accounting of how enforcement money is spent, Lucas said. Retainers, contracts, administrative fees. You can't weaponize enforcement without opening your books. Not legally. From the next booth, an older man in a denim jacket turned slightly, pretending not to listen. That tow truck was halfway to hooking my front axle, I said. On my driveway. At 5:42 in the morning. Based on a text message and a rule that never passed. That's not enforcement, Lucas said. That's intimidation with hardware. He tapped the photo of the tablet again. And this, he said, is the key. Because your tow operator wrote down the time, the plate, the address, and she texted, proceed. That's now a documented enforcement action tied to a named decision-maker. She can't pretend it was a misunderstanding. She wanted that truck moved. A woman at the counter turned on her stool. You talking about Karen? She asked. Because she sent a tow threat to my husband last winter when he parked his plow truck on the street during that storm. Lucas glanced at her, then back at me. See, he said. It's never just one truck. The man in the denim jacket chimed in, still staring at his eggs. She tagged my son's Jeep, he said. Said it lowered property values. We paid the fine because he was deploying that week and we didn't want the drama. I felt my jaw tighten. How many people has she hit with this? I asked. Clyde blew on his coffee. At least a dozen I know about, he said. Maybe more. Once folks get a letter with her letterhead, they fold. Not everybody's got the energy to argue bylaws at 6 in the morning. Lucas stacked the photos neatly, aligning the edges. This isn't about a truck, he said. It's about a pattern. And the pattern, combined with this tow attempt, gives us a lever. What kind of lever? I asked. He laced his fingers together on the table. This tow attempt is the key, he said. Because she ordered it, and because it violated state law, I can go after their treasury log. I can request every line item tied to enforcement and appearance compliance for the last few years and make them explain it under scrutiny. The words landed heavier than the plates the waitress set down. You can really do that? I asked. I can, he said. Whether I win depends on how crooked they've been. But the request itself... That's your right, the second she tried to use a tow truck as a scare tactic instead of a lawful remedy. He gathered the photos, slid them back toward me. Question is, he said, do you want to pull that lever? My anger had been simmering since the beep woke me up. Sitting in that booth, surrounded by neighbors who'd all been pushed around by the same woman with the same fake authority, something shifted. It's not just about my truck anymore, I said. Lucas nodded once. Good, he said, because this isn't going to be quick or quiet. He picked up his coffee, took a slow sip, then set it down. Jack, he said, if you're ready, I'll file the first notice tomorrow morning. The notice showed up the next morning like a bad joke taped to my life. I almost stepped on it when I opened the front door. A single sheet of paper folded once edge caught under the doormat so the wind couldn't steal it before I read it. The flagpole out by the driveway clanged softly in the cold, a hollow metallic knock-knock that matched my mood. I bent down and picked it up. Cedar Ridge. Homeowners Association Violation Notice, Form 4B. The subject line sat in bold, right in the center. Vehicle obstructing community aesthetics. I stared at the phrase a second, then snorted. Community aesthetics, I muttered. That's a new crime. Underneath, someone had filled in the blanks by hand. Property, Maple Drive, number 14. Owner, Rourke. Jack. Date of violation, 06/7:10 a.m. Description, mountain truck visually obstructs harmonious sightline and diminishes property values for surrounding homes. At the bottom, in neat cursive, was a signature line. Issued by K. Doyle, President. I checked the date. That was this morning. Only the time made no sense. I'd been standing at my own kitchen window at 7:10, and the truck had been exactly where it always was, offending nobody but Karen's sense of being in charge. I took my phone out and snapped a photo of the notice while it was still in my hand. Then I flipped it over. On the back, someone had added a note in blue ink. Further non-compliance may result in towing fines or legal action. Of course it may, I said. Across the street, Mrs. Lang's blinds shifted. She pulled them aside with 2 fingers, spotted the paper in my hand, and gave me a small sympathetic shake of her head before letting the blinds fall again. I looked down the street. Karen's white SUV sat at the end of Maple Drive nose angled toward my house. She was standing next to it with her phone up, filming my truck like it was a crime scene. Rick was beside her, hands in his pocket's collar, up against the wind. I walked down the front path, violation notice in hand. "You need a better hobby," I called. Karen lowered the phone, but she didn't stop recording. I could see the red dot still blinking on the screen. "We document all ongoing violations," she said calmly. "It's standard. Violation of what I asked. Existing Rule 1s you're planning to invent. Or whenever my truck hurts your harmonious sightline." Rick shifted his weight boots, scraping on the thin layer of ice. "If the tow doesn't work," he said. Voice low. "We have other tools, Jack." I looked at him. "Threats in writing," I said, waving the notice, "or threats in person. Which tool are we using right now?" Karen's lips thinned. "You're making this adversarial," she said. "We're trying to maintain standards. You tried to have my truck hauled off my driveway on a text message," I said. "You slapped a violation notice on my door that reads like a mood board. You want adversarial. Keep walking in this direction." I turned the notice toward her. "Did you handwrite this?" "Of course," she said. "As president, I sign every violation." "Good," I said, "because I'd hate for anyone else to get blamed." Her jaw flexed once. "You have 72 hours to correct this," she said, "or additional steps will be taken." "More tow trucks?" I asked. Her smile came back too sweet for the temperature. "We'll see which tool is most appropriate," she said. "Enjoy your day, Jack." They got back in the SUV. As she pulled away, she lifted the phone and took one last slow pan of my house, my truck, my raised flag snapping in the wind. I took another picture of the notice front and back, then folded it carefully and slid it into a folder inside the hall closet. Paper might get lost. Digital copies lived in places Karen couldn't reach. By 9, Clyde was at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee and his readers perched halfway down his nose. "Let me see it," he said. I slid the notice across the table. He read it once then, again brow furrowing. "Form 4B, he said. "They love that new form." "New?" I asked. "Karen pushed it through the last fall," he said. "I was on the board before she took over. We had parking guidelines, sure, but nobody ever wrote obstructing community aesthetics. That's pure Karen." He held the paper up to the light. "She dated this today," he said. 7:10? "Yeah," I said. "It was under my door at 6:50. He grunted. "Of course it was." A knock on the door interrupted us. I opened it to find 3 people on my porch. Mrs. Lang, a guy from 3 houses down who always smelled like motor oil, and a young mom I'd only seen in passing pushing a stroller. "We heard about the tow," Mrs. Lang said quietly, "and we saw Karen at your truck with her phone this morning. We've been through some things." I stepped back. "Come in," I said. "Coffee's on." A few minutes later, they were all squeezed around the table with us mugs in hand. The violation notice sat in the middle like a piece of evidence. "She did the same thing to us last year," the guy in the oil-stained hoodie said. "Sent a notice, then waived a tow threat until we paid appearance fees." "How much?" I asked. $500, he said. Said my work van cheapened the feel of the cul-de-sac. I park it at home between jobs. What am I supposed to do, rent a warehouse? The young mom nodded. She told me she could tow my car and put a lien on our house over chronic parking issues, she said. Our crime was parking in the guest spots when my parents visit. And you paid Clyde. Said, yeah, she admitted. We've got a baby. We didn't want trouble. Clyde picked up the notice again, eyes narrowing. Jack, he said slowly. You still got the picture you took of this when you found it? Yeah, I said. 2, actually. Pull it up. I thumbed open my gallery and found the shot. The notice in my hand, timestamp in the corner. The date on the form read exactly what I remembered. Clyde stared at the picture, then at the paper, then back again. Son of a... He caught himself glancing at the baby across the room. She's already messing with the record. He turned the notice so the bottom edge faced me. Look at the ink on the date, he said. See how it's a little darker than the rest, and the tail of the 6 that wasn't written in the same pass. I leaned in. He was right. The numbers looked layered, like someone had gone back over them. She either rewrote the date, he said, or she printed a new one and backdated it to make it look like you've been ignoring this longer than you have. And that matters how the young mom asked. It matters a lot, Clyde said. Backdating a violation to justify enforcement, that's fraud, not community standards. If Lucas gets his hands on both copies, the one you photographed and this one, she's toast. I felt something cold and steady settle under my ribs. So she's not just overreaching, I said. She's rewriting the past to make it look like we deserve it. Clyde put the notice down, flattening it with his palm. Jack, he said quietly, she's preparing something bigger than a tow. Lucas knocked at exactly 7:40 a.m. 3 firm raps measured confident, the kind that announce business rather than conversation. Morning frost still clung to my porch railing when I opened the door. He stood there in his dark jacket collar turned up, a large manila envelope tucked under one arm. A bold purple seal was stamped across the front. Request for financial disclosure. Behind him, Clyde shifted from foot to foot as if the cold wasn't what made him restless. Morning, Lucas said. Ready to move from documenting to acting, I stepped aside to let them in. The kitchen table was already covered in papers, tow photos, the violation notice Karen had backdated, and the printed state tow statute I'd highlighted in neon yellow. Lucas set the envelope down in the center like a final puzzle piece. He slid into his usual seat and clicked a pen, eyes steady on me. All right, he said. Let's walk the chain clean and slow. I sat across from him. Clyde hung back against the counter, arms folded. Lucas opened the envelope and laid out a set of stapled pages. This document forces the board to disclose every dollar tied to enforcement, he said. Retainers, contractor payments, fines collected, appearance fees, all of it. Because of the tow, I asked. Exactly because of the tow, he said. Here's the cause and effect. He raised one finger. 1. Karen issued a tow order without proper notice. A second finger. 2. That's improper enforcement. Black and white. Not interpretation, not opinion definition. A third finger. 3. Under state law. Improper enforcement activates financial review rights. He set all 3 fingers down and tapped the bold header on the document. 4. Those rights give us access to the Treasury log. Clyde whistled under his breath. You're sure this holds? He asked. It's not a theory, Lucas said. It's statute. When an HOA abuses enforcement authority, owners gain the right to audit the money tied to that abuse. And Karen made the mistake of putting her fingerprints all over your tow attempt. I flipped through the pages. Every line was clean, precise, citing state code in straightforward language. Owners, upon documented improper enforcement, may request all financial records related to enforcement actions for the preceding 60 months. 5 years, I murmured. 5 years of every shady dollar she's moved, Lucas said, and she'll have to produce them or explain why she can't. Either one is useful to us. Footsteps padded behind us. Mr. Everett from across the street and the young mom from yesterday hovered near the doorway, hesitant but listening. Clyde waved them in. Better you hear it directly, he said. Everett adjusted his cap. She won't hand anything over easy. Lucas smiled thinly. She doesn't have to. She just has to refuse in writing. That refusal becomes Exhibit A. I leaned forward. What happens after they receive the request? Two things, Lucas said. First, panic. Second, denial. And the second part is where they usually slip. He pulled the pen from behind his ear and pushed the signature page toward me. You're the filing owner, he said. I'm counsel. Clyde and the others sign as supporting owners. The young mom swallowed. Does this mean she'll come after you harder? Lucas answered before I could. She's already coming after him, he said. The difference is, now it's on the record. I signed. Clyde added his name beside mine. Everett scribbled his signature without hesitation. Lucas gathered the papers neatly. I'll deliver the physical copy to her doorstep, he said. Then send an email with the PDF to the entire board. They won't be able to claim they never received it. He snapped a picture of the signed form click and tucked the packet back into the envelope. Give me 20 minutes, he said. Watch your inbox. 20 minutes later, my email chimed. Subject, financial disclosure request, Cedar Ridge Enforcement Records to board at cedarridgehoa.org. CC owners list at cedarridgehoa.org. Lucas's email was direct, formal, and cold enough to bite. Attached was the signed request citing state statute and giving the board 10 business days to produce the records. I'd barely finished reading when another email arrived. From president at cedarridgehoa.org. Subject financial disclosure, request. This request is inappropriate and baseless. All enforcement actions have been proper. No such Treasury log exists. We will not participate in harassment disguised as legal procedure, not copied to the owners, only the board. Seconds later, Lucas replied to everyone. Refusal to disclose enforcement-related records after improper enforcement triggers statutory penalties. Confirm receipt. L. Banner Esquietu. Clyde called 10 minutes later, voice low. He handed her the envelope. He said, Jack. She looked rattled. Rick showed up right after. She dragged him inside before the door even closed. Through my window, Karen's house sat quiet and still against the snow. But in my mind I could hear her voice clipped and furious. Stop them, however you can. For the first time since the tow truck beeped at dawn, the fight felt like it was no longer on my porch. It was in motion, and the door had fully opened. The community center's meeting room looked more like a courtroom that night. Folding chairs packed wall-to-wall, winter coats draped over armrests, boots thawing puddles onto the tile. The usual 10-person turnout had transformed into nearly 50. Conversations hushed the moment Karen Doyle strode to the front. Her cheeks were already red, part cold, part pressure. She smoothed her blazer and tapped the microphone like she was starting a press conference. Let's begin, she said tightly. This is a standard monthly meeting. Please respect decorum. No one bought it. The air felt charged as if the whole neighborhood had been waiting years for this. Lucas leaned toward me. Remember, he murmured, we're not here to create conflict. We're here to review finances. Nothing more. But everyone understood what reviewing finances meant after the tow incident. Karen shuffled her notes with too much force. We'll start with community updates, she said. Lucas stood. No, he said calmly. We'll start with the financial disclosure request. A ripple moved through the room. Karen's eyes narrowed. This is not the agenda. It is now, Lucas replied. Per state statute, an HOA must address improper enforcement before any other business. Rick stiffened at her shoulder clipboard tucked under his arm like a shield. Karen tried to smile, but the muscles in her jaw betrayed her. Improper enforcement, she repeated. I'm not sure what you're implying. Lucas held up the printed request, the same one she'd received that morning. The purple county seal shone under the fluorescent lights. I'm implying what the evidence shows, he said. You ordered a tow without proper notice. A contractor confirmed your directive. The law is clear, that is improper enforcement. He handed the packet to the nearest resident who passed it down the row like a courtroom exhibit. Murmurs grew as each person saw Karen's own text message printed in crisp black ink. Proceed with tow on Maple Drive number 14. Karen swallowed hard. Those screenshots are taken out of context. Then provide the full context, Lucas said. Produce the enforcement ledger. Produce the Treasury log. Rick stepped forward. There is no Treasury log, he snapped. We don't keep some secret slush fund. Clyde rose from the opposite end of the room holding an old 3-ring binder. Funny, he said, because when I served on the board we kept a detailed ledger for every enforcement action. It looked like this. He set the binder on the table with a heavy thud. Karen's head jerked slightly like she hadn't expected anyone to still have the old bylaws. That binder is outdated, she said quickly. We revised procedures years ago. Where are the new ones? Clyde asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Lucas stepped closer to the front. Let me be clear, he said, addressing the entire room now. We're not accusing anyone without basis. We're stating facts. A tow order was issued illegally. A violation notice was backdated. Multiple residents have paid appearance fees with no documented justification. When that happens, state law entitles us to a full review of the association's financial practices. People shifted forward in their seats. A man called out, I paid those fees last year. Where did they go? Another voice. She threatened to tow my son's Jeep. Karen raised both hands. We are not entertaining mob accusations, she snapped. This meeting is closed until... It is not closed. Lucas cut in, voice sharp but controlled. You cannot suspend a meeting to avoid a statutory request. Someone clapped. Another followed. Karen's voice wavered. I'm maintaining order. No, Lucas said you're avoiding transparency. He turned to face the crowd. For 5 years, enforcement funds have moved from one account to another with no public record. Owners don't know where fines go. No one has seen a contract for the towing company. No one has seen a receipt for appearance compliance. If everything is proper, then everything should be simple to show. The room fell utterly still. Karen's face had drained to a pale, tight mask. Produce the Treasury. Log, Lucas repeated. Her breathing changed shallow quick. A woman near the aisle whispered, She can't. She doesn't have one. Or worse, I thought she has one and doesn't want anyone to see it. Karen grabbed the microphone. This discussion is over. No, Lucas said, it's finally beginning. You could feel the shift. The moment when a neighborhood realizes the person who claims authority might actually be the one violating it. Rick leaned into Karen, whispering urgently. Her knuckles whitened around the mic stand. Lucas gathered his notes and stepped back toward me. We'll make the request official tomorrow morning, he said quietly but loud enough for the people around us to hear. Karen froze. Rick straightened, and the room knew tonight was only the opening argument. At 8:12 a.m., the hallway outside the HOA office was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights humming. The only other sound was the metallic click of a microphone turning on as Deputy Collins lifted it toward his collar. Recording begins, he said, voice neutral. Service of subpoena, Cedar Ridge, HOA. Karen stood frozen behind her desk. Her blazer wasn't sitting right, one shoulder slumped wrinkle-sharp across the front. The subpoena rested on the blotter in front of her, the county seal shining like a warning flare. Lucas placed a second document beside it. Per statute, he said you're required to produce all enforcement-related financial records, effective immediately. Karen forced a laugh too thin to pass as confidence. You can't just walk in and demand. We're not demanding, Lucas said evenly. We're executing a lawful disclosure order. Deputy Collins lifted his clipboard. Ms. Doyle, you are required to comply, he said. Please open any storage safes or file cabinets containing financial material. Karen looked between us first at me, then at Lucas, then at the deputy searching for someone who might blink. I don't have those records here, she said quickly. Most things are digital now. We don't keep Collins tapped his pen. Ma'am, the subpoena covers physical and digital logs. If you have a safe or cabinet, open it. Her lips tightened. Finally, she reached under the desk and retrieved a key ring. Her fingers fumbled on the first try. Lucas didn't move. He just watched. The metal file cabinet in the corner groaned as Karen unlocked the top drawer. A faint whiff of dust rose when she pulled it open. Inside, stacked neatly, were 2 thick binders, forest green with a gold sticker labeled Enforcement, Treasury Ledger. A Ledger B. Discretionary. Her expression cracked for a fraction of a second, just enough to see panic slip through. "Remove the binders," Collins instructed. Karen hesitated. "Ma'am," he added. She grabbed them both and placed them on the desk. Collins slid them toward Lucas, who examined the covers without opening them. "These will be transferred to the county audit room," he said. "Chain of custody starts now." He took out 2 strips of red evidence tape and sealed each binder. The tape made a ripping sound as he tore the edges clean. My stomach tightened. This was the moment the twist Lucas had warned me about. The moment when the toe screenshot stopped being just a picture of abuse and became something bigger. Prop number 3 restored evidence with weight. Collins logged the binders aloud. Time 08:21. Items seized HOA Enforcement Treasury. Logs A and B, condition intact, transferring to County Auditor's Office. Karen grabbed the edge of her desk. "This is harassment," she snapped. "You're making a circus out of nothing." Lucas didn't rise to the bait. "You backdated a violation notice," he said quietly. "You ordered a tow outside procedure, and based on what I'm seeing, you've been moving money without owner approval. That is categorically false," she said. "Good," Lucas replied. "Then you'll have no trouble explaining the ledgers." The county audit room smelled like old carpet and copier toner. 2 ceiling fans turned slowly overhead. A long table sat in the center, cleared for the binders. The auditors, 3 of them, gray sweaters and practical shoes, took their seats. Collins placed the binders down and announced the transfer. Lucas sat across from Karen. I sat beside him, my folder of photos in front of me. The clamp on my truck, the tow, text, the backdated notice. Prop number 1, number 2, number 3, now lined up in legal form. The lead auditor broke the seal. He flipped the first few pages, brows pulling together. "These payments," he said, tapping a column, "how were they approved?" Karen crossed her arms. "Routine enforcement costs." "Where are the minutes documenting the vote?" he asked. "There are no minutes for routine matters." The auditor turned the page. "And this," he said, "a retainer to Ridge Valley Towing for $8,000. Was this put to owner vote?" Her eyes darted. That retainer was necessary. We needed reliable enforcement partners. Lucas leaned forward. "There was no vote," he said, "because you knew it wouldn't pass." Karen's neck stiffened. The auditor flipped further, his expression tightening. "Ms. Doyle," he said carefully, "explain these discretionary payments. They're labeled compliance facilitation. Who authorized these?" Karen opened her mouth twice before sound came out. She faltered. They were fees collected to ensure resident cooperation. On what authority, the auditor asked. She stared at the ledger. At the columns she'd once controlled fully, now laid bare under someone else's eyes. Lucas nudged my elbow gently, a small signal. "This is it. The break." I felt something in my chest loosen like the first breath after weeks underwater. The auditor closed Ledger A and set it aside. "That's enough for now," he said. "We'll continue the review, but initial findings raise concerns of unauthorized expenditures." Karen's hand shook on the table. Lucas straightened, gathering his notes. "This," he said quietly to me, "is enough to break the board." Across from us, Karen stared at the sealed second binder as though it were counting down, and, for the first time, she had nothing left to say. The projector hummed as the lights dimmed. A white rectangle bloomed onto the wall of the county audit room, and bold text appeared across it in clean sans-serif letters. Preliminary findings. Cedar. Ridge. HOA. Enforcement ledgers. A low murmur rippled through the rows of residents who had come to witness the session. Some sat forward in metal chairs. Others stood along the back wall, arms crossed, waiting to hear what the numbers would confirm. Karen sat alone at the front table. Her shoulders were rigid, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles formed sharp white ridges. Lucas and I sat on the opposite side with the auditors and the county's Assistant Attorney General, Ms. Halston, between us. Halston clicked her pen once. "Let's begin," she said. The first slide expanded a bar graph with 5 highlighted columns. The lead auditor spoke. Our review of Ledger A and Ledger B shows a clear pattern. Enforcement spending disproportionately targeted a small group of residents. He clicked to the next slide. Enforcement actions by household. A striking bar rose far higher than the others labeled low-income and senior homes, 63%. Gasps echoed. A resident whispered harshly, "That's why she always went after Mrs. Green." The auditor pointed to the figures. These households represent less than 20% of the community, but account for over 60% of enforcement-related fines, fees, and towing attempts. Karen's jaw tightened. They had repeated violations, she said, her voice brittle. I was protecting property values. No, the auditor replied calmly. The logs show selective enforcement. Another click. A pie chart filled the screen. Compliance facilitation fees, $41, $380, no approved use, no vote, no minutes. The room went silent. Even breathing felt loud. Halston leaned forward. Ms. Doyle, these payments were discretionary. No documentation indicates board approval. Would you like to clarify their purpose? Karen straightened in her chair. Operating expenses fluctuate. I handled them efficiently. The community expects standards. Standards aren't the issue, Halston said. Governance is. The next slide showed a timeline stretching 5 years. Tow retainer, $8,000. Annually, no owner. Vote. Lucas tapped the table, once a subtle emphasis. And every year, he said not one ballot, not one notice. Karen opened her mouth, but the auditor raised a hand. There's more. He switched to a table filled with rows of dates. Here are the towing incidents initiated by direct presidential order. 7 of them were issued without prior notice. 4 were executed within 1 hour of the order. Heads turned toward me. People remembered the reverse beep outside my driveway. The auditor tapped one row. Maple Drive, number 14. Proceed with tow, issued by Ms. Doyle. No written notice, no warning, no lawful cause. And this, Lucas added, lifting my original screenshot, is the primary piece of evidence establishing improper enforcement. Without it, financial review rights would not have been triggered. Prop number 3, fully restored, now projected as part of the official record. Karen exhaled sharply. You're twisting facts. Halston didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. We are reading your ledgers, Ms. Doyle. You wrote the facts. A beat of silence passed, heavy, decisive. The lead auditor clicked to the last slide. Recommended actions, preliminary. Refund of wrongful fees and towing assessments. Independent oversight of all enforcement actions for 12 months. Mandatory leadership restructuring or suspension of current officers. Residents sucked in a collective breath. Karen gripped the edge of the table. You can't remove me. I was elected. Halston folded her hands, expression steady. When leadership engages in unauthorized financial practices, she said, state law permits provisional oversight. Karen blinked. Oversight? You're putting us under state control. We didn't put you there, Halston said. Your ledgers did. Then she added with the precision of a gavel strike. As of today, Cedar Ridge HOA is under provisional oversight pending completion of the full audit. A wave of sound rolled through the room chairs, scraping whispers rising. Relief. Vindication. Shock. Justice at last, standing on its own legs. Karen slumped back the fight, draining out of her posture. Rick, standing at the side wall, looked away, jaw tight. Clyde pushed through the aisle, stopping beside me. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Her authority ends now. Karen heard it. Her eyes flicked toward him, anger mixed with disbelief. I exhaled slowly. Weeks of tension loosened in a single breath. Not triumph, not revenge, just a clean, quiet catharsis. For the first time since the tow truck beeped outside my driveway, the weight shifted off my shoulders and onto the record. The numbers had spoken, and they weren't done yet. The first thing I smelled when I stepped into the cul-de-sac was hickory smoke. 2 grills were working in tandem, The lids angled open, letting the aroma drift over the street like a soft announcement that life here had finally slowed down. Kids darted around the folding tables, weaving between adults carrying plates, their laughter cutting through the evening air in a way we hadn't heard for months. My mountain truck sat near the center of it all, parked legally peacefully, without a clamp, without a threat, without anyone circling it with a camera phone. Just a truck again. But everyone looked at it differently now. Clyde waved me over to the neighborhood bulletin board. A fresh laminated notice had been pinned dead center edges secured with silver tacks. The county oversight stamp caught the fading sunlight. Towing and enforcement policy, effective today. No vehicle may be towed without town approval, not solely HOA direction. All improperly collected enforcement fees will be refunded within 30 days. All enforcement processes will remain under state supervision for 12 months. Clyde tapped the notice with the back of his knuckle. "This town got its backbone back," he said. "Feels good to stand up straight again, doesn't it?" I looked around the cul-de-sac. Neighbors who once kept their heads down now stood together in small circles, retelling their parts of the story, how they'd received odd violations, how Karen had insisted the towing contract was standard procedure, how everything changed once the numbers exposed the truth. Lucas walked toward us holding 2 paper plates stacked with ribs. "Refunds started rolling out this morning," he said. "A lot of relieved bank accounts in this neighborhood." A couple carrying their toddler paused near my truck. "That the one the husband asked?" "The very one Clyde answered for me." The wife let out a low whistle. Hard to believe something as simple as a tow order unraveled that whole mess. Lucas shrugged. Hard to hide misuse of funds when someone keeps neat ledgers. A group of newer residents drifted closer. One of them, a guy maybe mid-30s with a trimmed beard and a new homeowner cautiousness about him, nodded toward my truck. "I heard about all this," he said, still trying to wrap my head around it. "You? Really fought them?" I wiped barbecue sauce from my hands and leaned against the tailgate. "We didn't fight them," I said. "We fought back without breaking a single law." 2 older men nearby clapped softly like the line had been waiting for someone to say it out loud. One of the kids sitting on the tailgate looked up. "So, the lady who tried to tow you, she can't do that anymore?" "Nope," Clyde answered. "Not unless she wants to answer to half the county." Someone opened a cooler and passed drinks down the row of tables. Paper plates piled high with cornbread and slaw. The hum of everyday life restored. Across the street, the porch lights flicked on as dusk settled. The glow spilled across the pavement, catching on the chrome of my truck, turning it into a warm reflection of orange and gold. I stepped back to look at it not as a problem, not as evidence, but as a witness to everything we'd just lived through. "Funny thing," Lucas said quietly, joining me. "A truck shouldn't have to carry a neighborhood's fight on its back." "No," I said. "But sometimes something ordinary becomes the thing that says, enough." By the grill, Mrs. Lang held up her refund check like a badge of honor. Someone else asked about the oversight timeline. People leaned in, listening, learning, finally understanding their rights. Healing didn't show up all at once. It arrived in small recognitions, in shared stories, in reclaimed confidence. A sudden breeze lifted the laminated towing policy on the bulletin board. It fluttered, then settled, shining boldly under the street lamp. Clyde nudged me with his elbow. "You know, he said before, all this folks here were scared of stepping out of line. Now look at 'em talking, laughing, grilling, like we're our own little town again." Kids laughed near the tailgate, their feet tapping rhythmically against the metal. And no one rushed to stop them. No warning, no glare, no threat of a violation notice tucked under a doormat the next morning. Just neighbors, just a street, just life. As the sun dipped fully behind the mountains, lanterns flickered on. Warm light stretched across the cul-de-sac, catching faces softened by relief. It felt like the first real exhale after months of holding breath. I stepped farther back, seeing the entire scene the way a camera might pull away the bulletin board, with the new policy gleaming the cluster of residents around Lucas, telling the audit story again, kids perched on my truck like it was a park bench. Clyde laughing louder than he had in years. And, at the center of it all, quiet but unmistakable, the truck. Not a symbol of defiance, a symbol of lawful resistance, a reminder that people could push back calmly and legally and win. And that legacy I knew would outlast every tow order Karen had ever tried to write. The new towing order hung on the bulletin board with a fresh county seal, and for a moment I just stood there feeling the last of the pressure lift from my chest. My truck sat under the porch light steady and unbothered, the same screenshot that once proved Karen's abuse, now a quiet reminder of why the system finally turned. We didn't win because we were loud. We won because every step stayed inside the law, line by line. And when the refunds arrived and the oversight took hold, folks looked at one another like a neighborhood rebuilt from the ground up. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story. Below your map might help someone redraw theirs.